she does kind of capitalize on the word tone a lot. Toning essentially means being in the constant state of tension. Your muscles are not in the constant state of tension, and if they are, I'd probably go to the doctors, to be honest. That's a problem. Toning doesn't exist. Anyone who's new or has supported TFNL for however long you've supported TFNL for, I do really appreciate you for doing so. If you're watching this, there is a strong possibility you are new to the channel and recently subscribed, so thank you very much for doing so. And although I'm probably not the best at expressing gratitude, especially on camera, I do really appreciate you taking the time to invest in the channel, be that through watching the videos, commenting, subscribing, whatever that may be. And I feel very privileged to have you as part of the TFNL family, so once again, thank you. I think the thing that really highlighted how much I enjoy doing YouTube and creating content, especially content that I hope to be benefiting others, is that after the Daisy Keech video started doing well, I would actively get excited about waking up the next morning just to see what people were saying. I haven't had that for quite a long time with YouTube and I've missed it, so again, thank you. Now we've said that, we're going to talk about someone who has been quite heavily requested recently and quite a while ago, and someone I haven't actually spoken about for many years, which is Krissy Cela. So a few years ago we did a video on her and we kind of briefly covered her as part of a larger video in which this was said.
There's a little bit of this, you know, see she's just holding a dumbbell and she's doing what would be a kettlebell swing.
But it's
but
not.
A, there's no swing because it's a dumbbell.
There's no kettlebell.
And B, there's no tension in her glutes other than the fact that she's just standing there, so she could do the same thing body weight.
But it's also too slow.
It's also far too slow.
Yeah.
But time and attention.
Yeah.
But it's not a time and attention kettlebell swing.
And I've decided to revisit her and have a gander and see what I think. We're going to split this video into kind of like three main areas, one of which being training, the other one being her meal advice and nutrition advice, and the third one being her app, Tone and Sculpt. So firstly, let's look at her training.
Chapter 1. The Sish.
If anyone's watched this channel for a while, you know I'm not really a massive fan of kickbacks. I feel that although they kind of do provide quite a good contraction and quite a good like burning feeling, just because you're hurting it doesn't mean you're working it. I'd much rather people prioritize compound movements such as squat variations, RDL variations. But other than that, things like lateral squats and regular squats are decent movements to include. I'm surprised she didn't include something like a single leg glute bridge, which I believe to probably be more effective than a kickback in this case. The one thing I do appreciate about Krissy is that she does promote lifting heavy and she does lift heavy herself. In her tutorial guides of where she's kind of doing like home workouts, her squat is to depth, which is great, but when she's going heavy herself, as you can see, she's not hitting depth and she's quite far away from it. There's a big argument about whether you should hit depth and not hit depth, and the initial theory was that if you go too low, you're going to hurt your knees, etc, etc, but that's actually not the case. If you were to stand up and do a squat now, you'd probably be able to get your hip crease below your knee, the top of your knee, quite comfortably without your back being compromised or anything. So why shouldn't you do that with a weight? Because if you're strong, let's say from here to here, when you go slightly below by accident perhaps, because you've maybe gone a bit too low, you haven't developed the strength to get you from here to here. And now your risk of injury increases because you're in a weaker area that you have not developed. Before we continue, if you're liking the video thus far, you know what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask a few things. 120 likes on the video if you like the video, because it lets me know that you want me to produce more content like this. I would really appreciate if you did take a few seconds just to press the red button down below and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me and I'm very thankful for your support. Don't forget at the end of the video I do comment question of the week. Drop a comment down below, let me know any questions you may have, and I'll answer one next week. Bless. But anyway, I won't hold you anymore. We'll carry on with the video. So I assume this is taken from her Tone of Sculpt app, which I will cover shortly, in which case I'm actually quite impressed. You've got a good squat based movement, you've got a good hamstring based movement being an RDL, and you've got a good quad and glute movement being a reverse lunge. The dog is here. Here we go, here we go. Oh, hello little puppy. Oh, hello. He's bigger than I am, and I'm heavy and 6'2". Your breath just never gets better. Do you not brush your teeth? Hello little sausage. Okay, we're climbing. Be free, my child. Are you done? Are you done? You're useless. Yeah, as a whole, I actually think this is great. These are really good movements, and I'm really impressed that she's actually chosen to include them. Obviously, as I said from the Daisy Keech video, I'm not really a fan of when people do like 5-minute workouts, because yes, they are better than nothing, and if 5 minutes is all you can manage, fantastic. But a lot of people are kind of fed the idea that these 5-minute workouts will help them achieve a result that's likely unachievable from completing a 5-minute workout. And that's not on you. That's not your fault for believing that. It's more so a lot of influencers kind of making you believe believe that. It's a lot of influencers suggesting that this 5-minute workout is comparable to this hour workout or this half an hour workout, etc, etc. So this is the first time I'm really looking at deadlift, and she chooses to sumo deadlift. Her back position is great, neutral spine fantastic. The other thing I really appreciate is the fact that her head is maintaining that neutral spine. So a massive misconception when you're like deadlifting is when everyone's like, oh, neutral spine, flat back, etc, etc. Yes, but if you think about where your spine essentially runs, top of the neck, down to the tailbone, your head positioning then becomes a part of that neutral spine. So when you see everyone like deadlifting like a flat back and then they look up like that, that's not a neutral spine. You want to essentially look where your spine wants you to look, which is straight. Although her knee position is not great. She's not externally rotating the hips properly, so her knees are kind of cave in slightly, which also limits and potentially reduces glute involvement. So if you really do want to optimize glute involvement on a sumo deadlift, really focus on externally rotating hips. That'll help bring your glutes into a bit more.
Chapter 2. The Munch.
So now we're going to kind of look at the food side of things, and I'm really curious to see what she has to say.
What I like to personally do is reduce my calories by 10%, so around about 100 calories, maybe a little bit less.
So she speaks about how you shouldn't drastically decrease your calories. Completely agree, great advice. A lot of people I see do tend to go to almost like desperately trying to get the weight off, therefore they could put themselves in quite an aggressive deficit, which is not going to be sustainable. Therefore, it's not really going to help you achieve your goals. Because everyone always asks me like, oh, what's the best diet for me? And the reality is there is no singular best diet. The best diet for you is the one you can remain most consistent with. We've got two diets, diet A and diet B. Diet A is a better diet, but it's a much harder diet to stick to. It'll get you where you need to go in 8 weeks, but you're going to have a lot of trouble sticking to it and probably won't make it to the 8-week mark. But diet B is a bit slower. It'll still get you where you need to go, but it'll probably take about 12 weeks. But it really fits into your lifestyle and allows you to eat the foods you actually enjoy. On paper, Diet A looks better because it gets you where you need to go faster. But Diet B is going to be the one you're going to remain most consistent with and the one you're actually going to complete. So well and good sticking to a diet that's optimal, but it's not really optimal if you can't finish it. Although I agree that a 10% drop in calories is a really good starting point for many. The fact that she said her 10% drop is 100 calories or maybe even less in some cases suggests that her maintenance calories are around 1,000. I think that's probably an exaggeration. I can't see her eating less than maybe 1,400 to 1,600 calories for maintenance, but I may be wrong, because it could be really hard to maintain like a healthy and sociable lifestyle on 1,000 calories. And on top of that, it's going to be really hard to fit tolerable foods into a 1,000 calorie diet whilst getting sufficient volume. And in fairness, later on in the video, she does speak about prioritizing volume foods, essentially eating as much as you can while staying within your calories, which is basically going to keep you fuller for longer and hopefully not make it feel like you're actually dieting too aggressively, which is perfect.
I don't like keto diets. I don't like low carb diets.
Here she speaks about not wanting to promote keto diets and low carb diets, which I agree with. Like, yeah, keto works for a lot of people, which is fantastic. All diets that work follow the exact same principle as one another, which is calorie deficit. You cannot lose body fat without being in a calorie deficit. So if anyone says, oh, this diet worked for me, this diet worked for me, the fundamental principle they all follow is for some reason or somehow you are in a calorie deficit. Choosing to follow keto or a low carb diet is just a personal choice and a preference. And I don't think you need to cut out any macronutrient to diet. In simple terms, and without going into too much detail, protein is fundamental for the building and maintenance of muscle mass. The more muscle you have, the more calories you will burn while at rest. Fat intake needs to be at a healthy level, which is fundamental for things like hormone production. If your fat levels go too low, you're going to really struggle to produce adequate estrogen or testosterone, depending on what your primary hormone is. And carbs are usually associated with energy. The only two macronutrients you actually need to survive are protein and fats. So that's why people get away with dropping their carbs so low, because carbs is the one you can kind of justify playing around with a bit more because you don't actually need it. Search TFNL macros in the search bar above, and the first video that'll pop up with pictures of pancakes will help you work out your calories and your macros.
Chapter 3. The app.
So on to the third and final point, Tone and Sculpt. I downloaded Tone and Sculpt and I had a look at some of the programs. I think for legal purposes, I can't actually show you what the app includes. All I'll say is it does go through food, meal plans, etc. And it does cater really well to dietary requirements, i.e. whether you're pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, which is fantastic and love to see it. Obviously, I know they're not catered to me. I'm not their target audience, but let's pretend I am. The training was decent. As a whole, a lot of compound movements in there. a lot of decent movements, and it's really thorough. All of the programs have quite good pre-programmed notes speaking about stretching, warming up, etc. I'm actually really impressed with this, and I'm surprised because I didn't expect to be. Granted, there are a few movements in there that I'm not a massive fan of personally, like rope pull-throughs and things like that, but again, personal opinion. But then it kind of flips over to the meal side of things. It speaks about the target calories it put me on initially when I spoke about my activity and everything, I believe to be quite low. It put me on around 23 to 2500 calories. Again, there are things to consider. As far as I remember, I don't believe this app asked me for my gender. That's a consideration. It doesn't ask me about my body fat percentage, my muscle mass, etc. So that's another consideration that could influence the calorie targets. Do I think you could get equally good content for free elsewhere? Absolutely. As I've said before, Natacha Oceane's producing great stuff. Lucy Davis is producing great stuff. I've got a video on macros if you want to see it to help you work out your calorie targets from there. You've essentially now got all of the aspects of this app for free. I've also got free programs I produced a while back if you want to look at those as well and get some ideas. But if you were going to pay for something and did want to invest in something, I wouldn't say this is a bad investment in fairness. The one thing I don't like, which is kind of like probably contributes to the title of this video, she does kind of capitalize on the word tone a lot. Toning essentially means being in the constant state of tension. Your muscles are not in the constant state of tension, and if they are, I'd probably go to the doctors, to be honest. That's a problem. Toning doesn't exist. What toning really means is to essentially have muscle mass and low body fat, therefore look defined. I get the use of the word tone is mainly for app purposes because it's quite a catchy title. I do feel that somewhere she should probably state that, but perhaps she does state that and I've missed it. But that's it. Those are my thoughts on Krissy Cela. I'm actually really impressed, especially compared to what I saw a few years ago versus now. Although there are a few things I'm not 100% on board with, like the use of kickbacks and whatnot, does promote the use of actually lifting weights. The Tone and Sculpt app is actually not bad. The diet advice is also not bad. I would actually say I'm pleasantly surprised. But now here it is. Comment question of the week from the last video. Immersive Sports Science asks, how has 2020, the year that effectively got cancelled, isn't that the truth, changed your outlook on life, fitness and performance? 2020 was a shambles of a year for many. I think it's kind of highlighted to me that I can find joy from more simple pleasures in life now. It's really shown me how much I took the gym for granted and how much I miss being able to go to the gym consistently. And I think because of that, I think my training is going to improve going forward, as I think my consistency is going to improve going forward. Because if you see my last Instagram post, I said about how consistency is probably my biggest hindrance. Like the last 12 months have been a bit crappy, to be honest. I'm glad I can take some positives away from it. But again, that's the video. I'm not expecting everyone to agree with what I have to say. I'm merely basing my opinions of what I've seen from the research I've put into this video. But I'll do my best to form a balanced and what I believe to be fair opinion of somebody to hopefully help you if you are watching this. Whether you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And before we go, 120 likes on the video. If you're not gonna do it for me, do it for the puppy who's sleeping next to me and farting next to me. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. To old and new subscribers, thank you for all the support. It genuinely does mean the world to me and I really appreciate it. And thank you for tolerating the video.